How does that work?
Well, south facing is optimum, 180 degrees and about 34 degree pitch is the magic number for Missoula, Montana.
Just hearing what some other folks were asking. So first question from Mark. Hi, Mark. Good to hear from you. Asking me to talk about advantages and disadvantages of tracking ground mount systems, and if there are any trackers robust enough to warrant the additional cost. Yeah, great question. So, you know, when you go to put in solar, there's typically two different type of mounts. There's a roof mount system, like Dan talked about in the video, and a ground mount system. And the ground mount system is a little more challenging just because you do have that physical infrastructure of pouring the concrete to hold the support kind of pole that holds the racking, that holds the panels. And when you put your system on a rooftop, you cut out, you know, the foundation structure parts of that and just go right to the racking and the panels. I think, so to answer your question directly, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't followed a lot of the tracking technology for a couple reasons. One, I think smaller systems and rooftop solar systems that are typically mounted on the roof don't have tracking infrastructure. And secondly, I think for the additional benefit you would get in Montana from the additional production for a tracking system, which for those people who don't know, that's where you have a solar panel that will actually tilt and follow the sun throughout the day in order to get more production. I don't know that you'll get enough to make it worth the additional cost off of a small rooftop system. For something like a 2 or 3 megawatt, you know, utility scale system that we've seen in Montana, I'm thinking about the one out at Reed Point, maybe right off Highway 90 there. You know, that's got trackers on it. And, you know, I think for them, because of the economies of scale, you know, 1 or 2 or however many percentage points increase in production can be significant. But I don't know that it's worth it for a small scale system. I will say for those that have, that put in a ground mounted system, typically the racking infrastructure is adjustable. And we'll see a little bit of that actually in the next video. Travis Jordan from Jordan Solar, M2 Solar, is going to talk a little bit about that. And instead of an active tracking system that by itself will track the sun throughout the day, it's sort of a passive tracking system where you can kind of rotate a lever and shift the angle. And I think Travis recommends leaving it at one angle for the summer and another for the winter, and kind of leaving it at that. Let's see. Second question is about excess power going to our neighbors. Is that literal? And how does that connect to kind of a microgrid system concept? And have we seen microgrids in Montana yet? So it is pretty literal, yeah. You know, similar to the way water flows, electricity flows to the path of least resistance, and it flows directly to wherever power is needed. So if you have a home here and a home here, and this home needs power, if you're pushing electricity onto the line, it's going to go right to meet that source. Electricity isn't going to skip over a load that it could be serving in order to go check in back at the substation, I guess. So yes, it literally does flow right to your neighbors, or wherever the load is. Does that kind of relate to a microgrid system? I would say no. I think the key components of a microgrid have more to do with the entire kind of group of technologies and systems that are working within that one collection of loads and power generators. You know, what you see a lot in microgrids is people being able to produce energy and share energy in a way that we talk about with net metering, where if somebody isn't meeting all of their load, someone else who has excess energy can serve that load. A lot of what we talk about with microgrids has more to do with what happens. What I just described is pretty standard, regardless of whether or not that microgrid is being fed by the utility. I think microgrids, their power, and pun intended, I guess, really comes from when the grid goes down. So if, you know, for example, out in Deer Lodge is one of the few microgrid systems that I know of in the state that Northwestern put in. And it was kind of a pilot project, and they had a feeder line that was kind of way out at the end of this distribution system, and it was a little inconsistent because of just the geography, because of the weather that they get in that part of the state. And so what they did was they put in a microgrid, and they're testing it, and I think they have something like an 85 kW system or something like that, and then battery backup. And so if that feeder line goes down, that community still immediately has power, which kicks on from the solar and from the battery storage. So that's kind of the benefits you're looking for in microgrid. And have we seen it to great extent in Montana? Not yet. I think it'd be interesting to see more of them, and I hope we do see more of them, but not yet. Paul Cheetah, hi Paul, good to have you join and good to see you. Question about comparing microinverters to one main inverter. Yeah, so this is an important question, and this is one I definitely recommend asking your installer about. So the question here is about different types of inverters. What we showed in the video was one main inverter located in the garage there that took the power from all the panels and converted it and sent it back into the home. There's another type of inverter called a microinverter, and the process and the purpose is the same, but instead of one large inverter there, it's a small inverter that actually is attached right to the back of a solar panel. And typically, I think you put one on every maybe 2 or 3 panels. So you would have, for example, maybe 4 or 5 microinverters versus one just single main inverter. The benefit of a microinverter is because of the way panels are wired, if you have a string inverter or one big inverter, like we showed in the video, if one of your panels goes down for some reason, if it's not operating, it could pull the other panels offline with it. With microinverters, that doesn't happen. So if one panel goes down, it's kind of like a string of Christmas lights back in the day, right? When you had strings of lights that were all tied together, if you lose one Christmas light or holiday light, the entire string goes down. Whereas nowadays, if you lose one, the other ones, may stay lit. And so it's a similar concept there. There's a bit of an additional cost, but sometimes the energy production, depending on what you're getting, could make it worth it. I don't see any other questions, so what I'm going to do is jump to our second video here, which is about off-grid battery storage, and talks a little bit about ground mount solar as well. And this features Travis Jordan with MT Solar. So let me make sure I can do this correctly here. And Robin, again, maybe you can give me a thumbs up once it starts, just to make sure the video and audio are good.
Hi everybody, my name is Andrew Valanis. I'm with the Montana Renewable Energy Association. MREA is a nonprofit organization based in Montana that works on renewable energy, education, and advocacy. We are down in the beautiful Bitterroot today. We're going to be talking about off-grid energy storage systems powered by solar PV, as you see behind us. Joining me is Travis Jordan of MT Solar. Thank you so much for joining us, Travis.
Absolutely.
We're going to be talking about different system components today. We're going to be walking through some of the things people should know about and understand when they're thinking about going off-grid and storage and solar. But to start, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, my parents were off-grid before I was born, so I was raised in the mountains of North Idaho in an off-grid system, and we had a small ranch there. And as I was growing up, I remember doing battery math and inverter math at the kitchen table along with my grade school homework, and somewhere in there became a desire to grow up to be an electrician someday. Way too much here I didn't understand. I needed to get a little better understanding. So I went into becoming an electrician and became certified. Once I started into the electrical trade, it became obvious that there were many other people that needed things answered for their off-grid solar systems around North Idaho. And after we moved to Montana here, we found out there was that need here as well. So For many years now, we've been servicing the Montana customers, doing off-grid installs around the state under the name of Jordan Solar. And a number of years ago, we also identified a need for a better mounting solution so that we could mount solar in remote areas without having cranes and hoists and scaffolding. So we started up the company MT Solar, which stands for Montana. So Montana Solar has been specializing now in these mounting structures like you see behind us for a number of years, and we're selling them all across the country. So that's what brought us here today.
Great. Well, thanks again for being with us, Travis. Obviously been steeped in information on off-grid systems since you were a child, so we're excited to talk with you today. Let's go ahead and dive in. Travis, so before we dive into the different system components, when a customer is thinking about being off-grid and knowing that they're going to need storage, what are some of the considerations they should think about first?
Absolutely. That's a very common question we get. And growing up with it, I had many of the same questions. Can I run this? Can I run that? How much energy does it take? How much do I need to store? How much do I need to have? And as we've worked with just hundreds of customers over the years, it becomes a very personal decision. We each have a different amount of energy consumption that we use. We really should all have a medallion that hangs around our neck that says, I use X amount of energy, because we become individual energy consumers. I like to explain to people that when my daughter goes to get ready in the morning and she grabs that hair dryer out of the drawer and she goes to dry her hair, great grandpa would have had a team of Percherons at 750 watts per horsepower. That's 1,500 watts for a team of Percherons, and that's what it would have taken for my daughter to dry her hair, and he was plowing his land with that and producing food for his family. So I like to remind people that it's really not so much about how much energy I can make, it's about how much energy I'm going to consume, and I can make a lot of very conscious decisions that drastically change the amount of energy that I'm going to need to produce because of my consumption. Many ways to work around those things, but very much it's a personal decision. Just like with my right foot, I control my fuel economy on my vehicle. With my fingers here, I get to control the economy of my system and how much generation I'm going to have to make the system be sustainable. And that's really what we're after. We're after sustainability on a very micro level, not even such a macro level, but sustainability of, can I produce on this premises what I can consume? Very easy to do, or can be extremely difficult or even impossible depending on the choices I choose for my consumption.
It's an interesting concept, right? So much of it thinking about what you're going to consume versus what you're going to produce, right? And when you're looking at off-grid systems, that's the bigger question, versus on-grid, you're connected to the grid, you have that backup, you have that option, whereas now you really need to start counting those kilowatt hours of what you're going to be consuming. And that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Travis, so
I'm going to cut off the video there before the outro and the kind of Q&A session from that video. But again, if anyone is interested in the Q&A session for the off-grid storage video, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and check it out. I will go ahead and just open it up for questions. I know there was one that came in during the video about the different, I guess I'll call them chemicals, used in the different types of batteries, and kind of different conversations on the different impacts of environmental and emissions, efficiency, how much energy it can produce and hold. I don't have a great comment or answer, admittedly. And the reason is because there are a lot of different types out there today. And as Travis actually mentioned in the video, it really, really depends on how big of a system, a storage system, how big of a storage system you put in, how you want to use it, what types of loads you're trying to serve. I know of systems in Montana that are backup power systems that are really only used if the grid goes down to serve a couple critical loads, and there are other systems that are used completely off grid to serve the entire home, like we just saw. And so you get everything from kind of the big industrial batteries that Travis was showing off to something really kind of small and kind of small wall-mounted, sleek system like a Tesla Powerwall, and there's everything in between. So unfortunately, Robin, I appreciate the question, but I just don't have an answer or a good one. Yeah, let's see, we've got to think about 10 more minutes or so. If anyone has any other questions about storage or solar or renewable energy in general. While you're thinking of your questions, if you want to submit them via chat, I am going to share just one more page, which is to show you MREA's installer directory. This is something I just always like to mention for people to be aware of. It's montanarenewables.org/directory. And what you can find here is an interactive map and directory of local renewable energy installers in your community if you're interested. And we've got their contact info and everything down here. But I also want to point out this how-to guide. If you click on this, it brings up a nice PDF that walks you through the process of how to go solar. And I know I've had a lot of comments that it's been really helpful for folks just to kind of walk them through the process. So MREA has resources like that and others on its website, and I encourage you to check those out. Let's see, I don't see any other questions coming in, which I assume means I nailed it, or the videos nailed it, I guess I should say. So yeah, Robin, I guess I'll pass it back to you, or see if there are anything else you wanted me to talk about today.
I have to learn to unmute myself. It's funny because I listened to these this summer, and now we're in November, and it just, I guess one question I would have you seen an impact in the people coming to your site or seeking information from you that has increased in this year, 2020, as a result of the pandemic? Are there any changes you've seen as a result?
A little bit, yeah. I think what we saw and what we experienced was, especially when the kind of stay at home and quarantine orders went into effect earlier this year, the timing that they went into effect was kind of March and early April, before we were really able to get outside. And I think at that time, and then particularly over the summer, as people spent time working from home and just living at their home all day versus leaving to go to work or whatever it was, is people were started to get really tuned into their energy use at their home. And that instigated a lot of conversations about energy efficiency, installing solar, installing storage. So I certainly got a number of calls. I know our MREA's installer members got a lot of calls, and things slowed down for them a little bit, but I'm happy to say our installers were actually pretty busy this year, which is great. And I think a lot of people were interested in how solar can kind of, lock in that long-term savings, especially, when you're sitting there looking at a much larger energy bill than maybe you're used to.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Any other last minute questions, thoughts, shares from folks who are currently solar users or considering solar energy?
Oh, I see another question that came in here from Mark. Let's see. Comments about the economics of solar given tariffs on imported panels, declining expiring tax credits. Yeah, absolutely. So first, declining and expiring tax credits, that certainly will have an impact. The biggest being that the federal investment tax credit, so the federal tax credit, which used to offer 30% off of the total system cost, stepped down to 26%, and is stepping down again to 22%. And after that, it drops all the way down to 0% for residential, and it does stay at 10% for commercial systems. But that's pretty significant. In the history of tax credits generally, I think I've been told, and I've read a lot about how that is one of the most successful as far as its intended purpose in driving growth in the renewable energy sector and renewable energy installation. So that stepping down is certainly going to impact things. Having said that, we've also seen the cost of solar drop just astronomically over the past 10 years. So, I think the tax credit should be extended to continue providing the benefits that it does, especially right now with kind of economic uncertainty and the pandemic, and a lot of people concerned about locking in long-term savings through things like solar. But as an advocate, you also hope for the day where you don't need tax credits because everything is so affordable that it's just not even a consideration. So that's certainly going to be impactful. As far as tariffs on imported panels, we'll see what the continued impacts are. I've read so many articles about the whole point. Well, I'm not going to guess at the motivations of the administration and the point of the tariffs, but some of the stated desired impacts were to boost domestic manufacturing. That happened to a small extent, but I think not in the way that the administration was hoping, and maybe not in the way that it was expected to. And that's for a number of factors that I'm not fully versed on. But the top line is that the tariffs weren't incredibly helpful in boosting large amounts of American domestic production of solar panels. When you look at the confluence of the tariffs on solar modules themselves, on things like steel, which is used for racking, and a bunch of other things, there was certainly an impact. My understanding is, when you look at economies of scale, those tariffs actually impacted utility scale installation more than small scale installation. And that was, a big, an important factor, at least for Montana's industry, because it's mostly small scale installers in Montana, doing rooftop solar. We have some utility scale solar here, but not a ton. So, some of the larger companies were trying to figure out how to weather that storm and how to work through it. I know for our Montana installers, I think a lot of people kind of tried to stockpile some panels and materials before some of the tariffs went in. And I think between that and other things, they were able to avoid significant impacts to pricing due to the tariffs, which is really good. But things like the federal tax credit, there's a state tax credit too, which offers, up to $1,000 per household. MREA worked with legislators this summer during the interim to make that credit fully refundable. And what that means is normally if you can't take full advantage of a credit because of your tax liability, for example, if there's an $1,000 credit available, but your tax liability is only $400, then you kind of lose out on that $600. With some tax credits, you can roll that opportunity forward into other tax years, and there's normally a limit on how you can do it. Well, what we did during the interim session was we said, well, what if we just made it fully refundable? Which means, if there's an $1,000 credit available and your liability is $400, you would actually get a $600 credit to your, a tax refund. That $600 would be added to your refund, which is really great because it makes those credits more impactful for kind of moderate and lower income individuals. For people who are struggling a little more with some of the upfront costs, if you have a lower tax liability anyway because you have lower income, rolling that over to future years isn't really going to be as impactful as getting that refund. So we're excited about that. We'll see if that bill survives the legislature. Those tax credits have been attacked in the past. And so, I'm hopeful it did get bipartisan support to get it out of committee, but we'll see if that continues through the session.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for participating. Andrew, thank you so much for the session. Valuable and informative as always. Any last minute questions? If not, I think we'll just say thank you again and invite everybody to check out the expo schedule for the remaining sessions. Andrew, as you know, I likely is doing another session same time tomorrow with 2 more videos from the summer series. And I'm the micro hydro system, and I'm trying to find my scheduler at the moment. I can't remember what the other one is.
I think we're doing renewables paired with
Sorry.
agriculture. Robin, is that
And
right?
renewals and agriculture. There we go.
Great.
Yep. Renewals and agriculture and micro hydro systems. So very good. Again, thank you, everybody. Check the schedule. And do also check out the MOA conference, which is happening concurrently at alternating times if you're interested in organic agriculture matters. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody again soon.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Robin.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.